next wave of retail. I'm Robin Lewis, CEO of the Robin Report, and we are presenting this thought leadership forum with the Kohl's Center for Retailing, a part of the School of Human Ecology at the University of Wisconsin. So one of the biggest questions facing many consumers as we hopefully kind of struggle out of this pandemic is, why go to a store? Recovery from the coronavirus is uneven, shopping in person policies are inconsistent, and of course, the internet looms even larger than ever over brick and mortar retailing. Legacy retail is challenged with transformation like never before. And at the very least, a major pivoting. And digital native brands are struggling with delivering meaningful experiences. And finally, they're realizing the need for them to open physical stores. And of course, the designation of essential and non-essential retail threw the industry into chaos. But fear not, we have three brilliant strategists with us for a deep dive into the burning issue of today, how to make stores relevant. Rachel Shechtman is the founder of Story and a pioneer as a fourth generation retailer in understanding how to deliver an in-store experience. Mike Tamte is the co-founder and co-CEO of Evereve, which is the leading retailer in women's contemporary fashion. And finally, Mike Gould, who really needs no introduction as an icon in the industry, who led Bloomingdale as its CEO for 23 years. And I might add, still a highly respected expert on leadership and workplace culture. Indeed, he's as relevant as ever. And he is so humble, he wouldn't say that he is, but he is. Anyway, so who could ask for three better experts to help us explore how retail is evolving as we emerge from this global pandemic, which accelerated many of the pre-COVID challenges and conversely, many of the opportunities, as well as a range of innovations. So Rachel, let's start with you. Why should we go to a store?
I mean, where do I begin? You should go to a store if it's a great store. If the store is lazy and not paying attention to customers and doesn't have good product, then don't go to the store. But, I think there's some magical stores out there, and I'm optimistic that there will be lots of changes down the road. But I think there's also plenty of folks out there that need to get their act together, so that there are more options and reasons to go. But I think, one thing we would always say when I had Story was, what's an experience you can give a customer they can't get on their couch? I think it's the most simple question. And if you can answer that question, what's a compelling experience, I should say, that you can't get on your couch? That becomes a good litmus test. But I don't know. I mean, I'm the wrong person to say why go to a store, because I'm the one who's going to say why don't go to a store. But as long as it's a good store.
Yeah, well, I think you hit it on the head. What does it take to get a consumer off of their couch? I think you did a great job with Story, by the way. It was fantastic.
Well, I think the one thing I'll say that I'm obsessed with a lot lately is, why to get someone off the couch. I mean, to me, it's three very obvious things, right? It's product, people, and experience. And depending on the category and the price point and the demographic, you're going to dial up different vectors depending on your audience. But I think the thing that I'm most obsessed with lately is I think there's this magical tool that we've forgotten about in the industry for a couple of decades, and they're called human beings. And I think we've forgotten the art of of customer service. And I think, you know, when there's a store that has amazing customer service, it really stands out. You don't even need a million bells and whistles. Just have like great experience and service.
Yeah. So, Mike Tamte, I keep mispronouncing that. Anyway, I do think that you have a perfect in-store experience, but so how would you define that? And how would you define a perfect store experience in general?
Yeah, I think the experience at Evereve is going to translate to other retailers as well. First, we want to deliver a kind and joyful service, right? Who wants to go into a store that's cold and sterile? If you get kind and warmth and joyful service, you're going to want to stay there. It's going to attract you. We do this by seeing what we call see the customer. And I'll get into that a little bit later. The second thing is we prioritize styling over selling. Many people are surprised that at Evereve, we don't pay commissions. We feel like it sometimes gets in the way of authenticity and that warmth. And sometimes what we do is we team style together. So I think that's very important. Part of our formula is when we connect with the customer, we want to ask that customer, we want to learn three things: her body type, her sense of style, and her lifestyle. And then our associates, we call them stylists on the styling floor. We don't even call it a selling floor. We call it a styling floor. We can best guide our customer to a product or an outfit that fits her needs as long as we learn those three things: body type, sense of style, and lifestyle. And third, I think some of the best in-store shopping experiences must have some sort of sense of discovery. We call it the dare, and that is when we introduce a new aesthetic, a new trend, a new brand, a new color, a new silhouette to a customer she would not have chosen on her own. It's the number one most common compliment we get at Evereve from customers time and time again is, you introduced me to something that I would have chosen on my own, and now it's my favorite piece. So I think those three things are what are necessary to deliver a great in-store shopping experience.
Wow, I love that word dare. That's great. So Mike Gould, you and I have discussed this over and over again. You know, our store is still relevant considering the alternative of the internet.
Well, listen, I've said it 100 times. I don't know where I stole it from, but people have been going to the market since the time of the Greeks. And we really don't need to go anywhere to buy anything. So let's start with that premise. I go to Evereve, I can go to Story, and when Rachel had her shop, I don't need to go there. I don't need to go to a restaurant to have dinner. Everything can be online, but we're social animals. We're human beings, and we need social interaction. We're wowed by sights and visuals, as both Mike and Rachel talked about. We also go to a store to find what's current. I can Google and get a t-shirt or tennis shorts at Amazon. It doesn't really going to tell me what's so current. It's not so easy. I get to see what other people are wearing, but it's about the interaction. And I think that Mike talks about wow, you know, how do you get someone to exceed their expectation? You know, if you haven't read it, Robin, I just finished reading Amazon Unbound, which is the second book that was written by Brad Stone, because he wrote the first one, The Everything Store. And I'll tell you something, if I was running a store today, if I was in Bloomingdale's, I'd have every executive read the book. I mean, Bezos, forget about playing chess and everyone was playing checkers. He's in a whole nother stratosphere. And what you get away from that book and listening to him is really customer obsession. And it's easy. It's a lot easy maybe talking about it when you have one store or you have a group of stores. It becomes very much more difficult when you're talking about department stores, specialty stores, or bigger stores. But in the book, he quotes Bezos saying, leaders start with the customer and they work backwards. They work vigorously to earn and keep the customer trust. Although leaders pay attention to competitors, they obsess over customers. And we do not obsess. Stores don't obsess. Now, will Louis Vuitton obsess? Yeah. Was that maybe why they only dropped 50% when their stores were shut last year, excluding .com, because people were able to communicate with their customers, with their clients? Absolutely. So why do we go to a store? We go to a store, we go to a restaurant. I can give you stories about going to restaurants up here in Millbrook. We go particularly because of the waitresses. We go because of the waiter. Because we walk in Jackie Mason's routine, we feel like an owner, feel like we're part of the family. And why can't that be in any other kind of a store? And so I think that if you really say that the customer experience really has to take absolute precedent over any business relationship or anything else in the balance sheet, it comes back to my comment that I made on the program with you a little while ago of, the purpose of any company is to exceed the expectation of the customer.
So, Mike, you pretty much defined experiences in a good way, but how would you define what you would believe to be the perfect in-store experience? I mean, is there anything out there that stands out? Or how you see it in your mind?
Yeah. Well, I do think knowing the customer is vital. I think, that's one of the reasons why when we try to see the customer, we want to know her by her name. We love sending thank you postcards to the customer and having more of that personal relationship. It's really important for a retailer, I think, to have a relationship with the business, with the customer. Sometimes some businesses have a relationship with a stylist to the customer. We have a little bit of a different approach there because we want to have that personal relationship between the company, us, and it's similar to Amazon and with the customer as well. So I think those are important additional factors of what's great in an in-store experience. But nothing for us. For us, our customer wants us to keep her moving forward. I mean, that's what our customer is expecting from us. Our customer is drawn to our warmth, and at the same time, there's a trust that we're going to keep her moving forward with her fashion. And I can tell you a little bit more about that maybe a little bit later, but I think it's important to establish that trust early on.
Yeah. Mike Gould, do you have a perfect in-store idea?
There is no one perfect idea, Robin. There's nothing perfect in life. I mean, come on. I mean, there's no perfect idea. It's what Bezos says. You start with the customer satisfaction. It's Peter Drucker. Listen. Why do I go to a little bookstore in Millbrook when I can just order from Amazon? I walk in there and it's owned by Kira. And she said, Mike, you just read these 2 books in politics. I got another one for you. She sends me an email.
So Rachel, now right in the back, what Mike's talking about, I know you have lived in the minds of a lot of legacy retailers, as well as forging whole new experiences through your story experience. What in the heck do you think holds back these physical stores from delivering a remarkable experience? What's wrong here? Can you give us a few examples of stores that are getting it right? And if you want to talk those that aren't getting it right, that's fine too.
I mean, I think, one of the things that comes to my mind, I'll answer your question in a little bit of a circuitous way, is one of the things when Mike T was saying was, in theory, as he was describing his store experience and a brand, you could really replay what he was saying and almost think he was describing a person. And so, years ago, out of nowhere during a consulting gig, I came up, I don't even know how, maybe a glass of wine or two, with this idea of a cocktail party test. Walk out and describe that experience as if it was someone you met at a cocktail party, right? So I might say, she was nice, but she didn't have much of a point of view and was kind of indifferent. So I wouldn't she wasn't offensive, but I wouldn't go out of my way to hang out with her again. And that might be my experience of the Gap, right? I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying a brand says something to, right? Another might be like, she was energetic and super positive and easy to talk to, and she traveled a lot, and that might be Lululemon. And you might describe both of those stores differently. But I think at the end of the day, like we're human beings with heartbeats and emotions. And so we need to think about what we do as being an extension of that, not something different. And I think, when in the insanely short-lived period that was the market by Macy's, may it rest in peace, the hypothesis going into that was, can you scale cultural intimacy? And we literally had the mayor of South Lake, Texas, and 50 community members in that store when it was under construction, tasting beers and wine for the cafe. Wow. Because it's the community enjoying the cafe, not like the random girl from New York City. And so if we want a community cafe, like we have to walk the walk or walk the talk, so to speak. And they tasted the food and the drink, and like that's how we shaped our menu. And I won't bore you with other examples, but I think, you need, back to what your question was, is how do you get there, or why isn't it happening? I don't know. I mean, I sound like an old lady if I talk about like kids these days, with technology and such, but I think, no one has really reinvented sales training. And I think it's a huge opportunity. And wow. It's a hybrid of like improv and psychology. And I had the most magical store experience at the Dries Van Noten new flagship US store in Los Angeles. It's the old opening ceremony space. And like, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I'm going to say it. Every bit of that store was magical. The merchandising, the design, the nooks and crannies, there were all these things. And the one thing that didn't fit with this magical store experience was the salespeople, not because they weren't nice, they were totally fine. But this one woman is like, and I was working at Barney's for 20 years, and that's great. But like what resonated with the Barney's customer of 20 years ago ain't the consumer of today. And so we have to figure out where it's like you get your software update, like updating software, or your phone restarts at 2 a.m. Where's the like reboot for how we reimagine customer engagement? Because unless there's some big initiative training program, I don't see it changing.
You have to start with the associate. You have to start with, how do I feel when I walk in? How am I greeted? How am I taken care of?
That's what Rachel was saying. Yeah.
Yes, I understand that. Now, a whole lot easier, as Rachel sure found out, a whole lot easier on an incredible store on 10th Avenue than it is in a store that's 800 stores, anywhere from whatever.
We actually did it. The one thing I didn't think about mentioning this, but actually I will politely disagree with my friend, Mr. Gould, in that we actually did it's not thousands of people, but we did put 200 people through a training program we created, because we had the question of, can you scale an intimate and meaningful, can you take that magic that's 10th Avenue? And, I can't speak to parts of the business outside my little pods within, 36 Macy's stores. But I can say we did a 3-day program called Know and Tell, and it was an immersive training program, and the response was amazing.
So we're coming up with many different ways in terms of how this experience is being defined, and it really is kind of unique to each different store brand. Or retail brand, I should say, depending on who their customer targets are and how they engage with the consumer. So Mike Tamte, back to you. You kind of talked a little bit about this, but about your secret sauce, if you will. What is that secret sauce for driving the incredible loyalty that you guys have?
Yeah, it's a lot of what was just talked about right now. But as I mentioned before, customers are drawn to our warmth, but the customer trusts that we're going to keep her moving forward in her fashion. Let's talk about the first part is that warmth. And I think that's what we've been talking about a lot here. I'm biased. I think Evereve provides the best shopping experience, the warmest shopping experience in retail today. I've challenged people by saying, prove me wrong. We always felt, we looked at Nordstrom as the gold standard, and we said, how are we going to beat Nordstrom in service? That's what we did 17 years ago, and I think we consistently do it today. It starts with what we have done is we have a set of core values embodied under the acronym HEART, HEART, humility, empathy, authenticity, relationship, tenacity, is just as alive here at our home office as it is in our stores. It's how we treat each other as coworkers. This is how we treat each other this is how we treat our customers. And when we exercise that heart muscle, it just naturally produces warmth. And I think that is what we're trying to get at here, is what makes a retail or a store stand out. It is that warmth and helpfulness, the kindness. Customers are coming in with a challenge, and how do we solve that challenge for them? And that's how we do it. And we're very proud of this, what we call the Evereve styling experience. But also we are very good at curating product. And I think today, when we talk about product, so many retailers today, the larger retailers, are turning into aggregators. They're bringing in all types of different brands. Go to their websites. There are hundreds of thousands of options. And that is creating this paralysis of too much choice. That is what we have decided early on to say, we are not going to be that. We are going to be a curator of contemporary fashion. Customers choose of all the different choices of where to go. They ultimately choose based, in my opinion, on service and aesthetic. And so what we want to do is we want to eliminate paralysis. And we want to say, this is the number of styles and aesthetic, this contemporary aesthetic that you can trust. And that is to keep her moving forward. Back to service. For us, I think, and we might be different. We have about 100 stores. We have about a couple thousand stylists across the country. And so maybe it's different compared to department stores or small boutiques. Maybe we're sort of in the middle there. But we have found huge success that because of the HEART, our acronym, and when we exhibit it to our customers and they see that we are serving with humility, and we are also using empathy to understand their issue and their problem, and also learning about their body type, their sense of style, and their lifestyle. We're authentic to who we are individually. We're building relationship with them, and we're doing it with such tenacity that they enjoy the experience so much that they in turn ask us, how can I be a part of this? How can I be an employee? And I think where retail has gone, maybe more so with department stores and legacy, is that they're not hiring their customer. At Evereve, we hire our customer. And therefore, it's easy to train what the Evereve styling experience is because she was the recipient and the beneficiary of it. So if you have such a winning styling experience, you will not struggle recruiting a team. I always tell a store manager of ours, if you're struggling hiring a team, it's probably because your service sucks. You're not exhibiting the Evereve styling experience. You're not understanding that heart. So I think that's what's really important. So all those, so when we pair curated contemporary fashion assortment with this warmth and keeping the customer moving forward, I think it's a perfect reason for someone to want to choose Evereve as a shopping destination.
Mike, Robin, I think Mike's comments were so right on. And yes, he has an enormous disadvantage as founder, smallest size stores and all of that. But it reminds me of the conversation you had with Tractor Supply. Mm-hmm. And the conversations were very the same, Mike. I don't know if you heard that interview. And it really was that I want to hire people who live in those communities that they also need the grain. They also understand, what it takes to have a baby calf delivered at 3:00 in the morning or whatever it is. But it is that simpatico of understanding the customer because I am the customer. And I think that is an enormous advantage you have.
Yeah, two things there. One, I got to say that that the idea of your hiring your loyal customers is brilliant. And by the way, Chico's in its heyday.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That's what they did. And not only do you have, somebody obviously loves your brand, therefore it's easier for them to communicate with the customer and make them love the brand as well. Also, the turnover is much, much less. I'm sure you're experiencing that as well. And how can they not connect better with the consumer?
It's going back to the very first thing I said, and that is, you really want to say, my number one goal is customer obsession. How do I get there? How do I get the customer obsession? How do I learn more about the customer, and how do I deal with customer obsession? Not, oh, well, I got another event going on, or I got a book signing, or I got a handbag resource coming in, and this, that, and the other thing. Yes, it's all great. I got it. But what's my obsession? And what maybe something else.
Yeah, but how do you instill that down into the entire organization?
It comes from the top, it comes from the top like everything else. It comes from a CEO, he or she, who says, this is my number one thing. This is part of my core value, and this is what we're going to do. In Bezos, of his 14 strategies, number one, as I said to you, number one is customer obsession and ownership. And last is delivering results. And by the way, he was making money when everyone thought he wasn't making money. He didn't report it.
Well, he just kept reinvesting it in terms of
But
growth.
he was making money. He was making money off the third party, and everyone thought he was only making money on the cloud. He didn't want to tell people he was making, because then the competition would say he has a good deal.
Yeah.
I just also say, at Evereve, we do promote from within. So most of our store managers were assistant managers before that, and were full-time stylists, and then part-time stylists before that. And then that's the progression and the career growth. And then you become a market manager, area director, regional director, chief of stores. It's pretty uncommon for us to hire from outside the company. We don't do it at director level and above. We have from time to time hired locals when we're opening a new store in a new community. But even there, we typically like to promote someone, a very successful stylist who embodies our core values. What Mike is talking about here is it starts from the top. And so that store manager is so important to us, because she's going to, she knows the experience that she wants to give to our customer. And she's going to have to hire that. She's going to have to find that empathy in the people, the customers who want to become stylists on our team. And so it's really important to grow from within. But I will say there's another reason why people choose to work in retail, and they love the community. They like fashion, but they love the community. And then the life skill that they learn working with customers is something they can take home to their families, into their communities, into the PTO, into the school. And so I think there's a lot of advantages of just learning as a human when you're dealing with people. It's a great life skill to learn. You're going to have fun with a community of like-minded people, and you love the fashion. So I think there's a lot of there are a lot of reasons for people to look at retail as a good career.
Yeah. Mike Gould, by the way, Mike is considered somewhat a guru on leadership, okay? And I know he teaches up at Columbia every so often. So Mike, what kind of advice would you give to these new young people, next gen people coming up? What kind of advice in terms of what they should do to become a retail leader? What kind of advice?
I don't know about being a retail leader. I think, listen, my advice to my own kids has always been, just follow your passion. I mean, you got to be passionate about what you do. I don't think it's about being a retail leader. I think it's about a leader. And I think it's about how do you get people to follow you and to find the best route to do it together. We started the session today to learn a little bit more about his company. I'm very envious. I think it's great. I think what he's done. And I think that, when you have something that's small and you're the founder, you mold it your way. You know, I walked in the Bloomingdale's. I really did believe it said Gould, not Bloomingdale's. I mean, I know it said Bloomingdale's, but I felt it had to be mine. I had to feel like it was mine, not Nordstrom's, you know, not, you know, Crate and Barrel. I mean, and I love him. He was a genius in that business.
I don't think any of Rachel or Mike Tamte can argue with do what your passion is. I think that's the best advice you could give anybody. I don't know, Rachel, can you add on to that? You want to say something about that?
No, I just think it's really important. I think I think what you put out is what you get back. And if you're pursuing your passion, you're being authentic and true to yourself instead of doing what you think you should do or what you think others want you to do, will always, kind of get you in trouble. But I think, I also don't, I also find that that's an intimidating, it's easy for someone to say who has a clear passion. I think, I could imagine myself at 21, 22 years old and someone saying, what's your passion? What do you mean, what's my passion? I like French fries. Like, what do you mean, what's my passion? And so I think the flip side, and it's also a luxury, right? Some people don't have the luxury to say, I'm going to just pursue my passion for whatever their circumstances are. So I think like with those two caveats, it's also important to say, knowing that some of the people listening to this, are in university, is like sample the buffet, try different things. And, don't, first of all, if you want any job in retail, do not do anything unless you work in a store first. I think that's the most important thing. But I just think that like, don't be afraid to take a job and ask questions. And, there were plenty of things I did that I didn't love, but that helped me get to my passion. But I didn't, I came out of the womb with a passion for shopping, but beyond that, it took me a while to figure it out.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think some people develop passions very early on. I know my older brother did. It took me a long time to figure out, what I really love to do. And most of it is speaking and writing, which came late, but that's what it's very interesting. Mike Tamte, you kind of talked about, how you would give advice. Would you have anything more to add on that?
I think we're entering a world, if we aren't there already, of what I call hyper niche. And it goes into passion, because passion can be big and scary. But I think in retail, we're going into a world where we're moving away from big department stores, and we're going into very, very smaller niche target customers.
Totally agree. Go on.
Yeah, and so therefore, when you're looking at what you're really good at, I would just, you can pursue that very specific passion, because I bet there's a customer there for it. Even us at Evereve, we're pretty broad in the sense, contemporary women's apparel is pretty broad. I think the future is even more of a niche, and narrowing it down. I would tell people, I love people who have a strong point of view. And so if you're a next generation retail leader, or you're a student, you're going to find your home if you exercise that strong point of view. And I think through that, exercising your strong point of view, you're going to find your passion too. So I would recommend those things. Be flexible. Be flexible too, because the world is changing so fast. I mean, we started off brick and mortar at Evereve, and then we've had to adapt fast into a digital world. 35% of our revenues come from digital, even though we have 100 stores across the country. We've had to adapt, and the world is changing exponentially faster. And so next generation retail leaders, don't look at just, be flexible, I think, with who you are and where your skill sets are going to take you, because it's going to look different a year from now, 10 years from now, than where it is right now. And so you just have to be a flexible person.
Agility is the other word, but you're so right. And it does change so fast. It's incredible. Do any of you have a question of?
I'll ask Rachel. I mean, what does she see? What do you see as this blend of retail, brick and mortar, and digital and immersion? Is that going to be something that the customers are going to expect in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think so my example is a biased one because it's my best friend's company and I'm on the board, but there's a great family experience retail concept called Camp. And they have 6 stores. We'll have 8 by the end of the year. And I think, you know, it's one of the best examples / the best example I've seen, I think, of a retail media hybrid and really kind of bringing experiential to digital in a way that I haven't really seen. And what I mean by that is like a couple just quick examples are, you know, during the pandemic when we were all forced to kind of think outside of the box, you know, one of the things that Camp came up with was virtual white elephant parties. And it wasn't just like, oh, you know, click a button and send a funny gift to someone. You know, it worked alongside with, you know, Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So you were seeing people real time, you were communicating, but you were like, you know, passing, you know, these silly gifts around because you couldn't be in a room doing it in person, but there was still a real time human element to it. And I just thought it was such a beautiful way to lean into what tech does do so well, but still have some theater to it. And so, you know, I think there's lots of things that they're doing. They've started, you know, offering ticketed experiences. Also, that came out of the pandemic and realizing, wait a minute, it helps us, you know, with crowd control and monitor the amount of people who come into the experiential part of the store. And then that, you know, goes towards the purchase of a product. So I think, you know, that to me is a good case study of, you know, a lot of innovations and such that I'm inspired and excited and fully biased about.
I don't know. I'm not, as crazy as it sounds, I'm not a big shopper. So to me, it's human connection. We're all about human connections. We're all about people crave. Listen, I know you do too. People crave connection. We want to be connected. That's why we go to a restaurant. That's why we shop. That's why not everything's online. That's why we go with our mask on to the playground or whatever it is. And that's who we are. And so you're right. I don't have a store that says, wow, this is the greatest. I got kids that think that Target's the be it all end all. A 23-year-old and my daughter-in-law who's 36. I mean, that's it. Why? And they take me through the reasons why. He can go anywhere, but he'll tell me why it's Target. So I don't have that. I'm what can I tell you? You know, I can meander through an antique shop in Millbrook just fine, but that's it.
All right.
Can I just add? Let me another one. My answer really quickly is they're national, but I do like furniture design. I think Room and Board is one of my favorite stores to go in, and it is just what we were talking about. It's this really good pairing of quality curated design, and then they call classic contemporary, but also you know the people. And I could buy things online there, but I do like going into the store. I know I'm going to get better advice, and it's going to be tailor-made to me. And listen, there are people. There's a segment of population who likes to make their own decisions, but I think a majority of customers want help. They want validation. They want that validation from a true stylist. That's what I get at Room and Board.
Very good. Great questions. And I think this is probably a wrap at this point. And I just want to thank all 3 of you so much, really. I mean, I'm honored to have been able to, you know, interview you guys. So have a great week and thanks again.
Hey, thank you,
Thank
Robin.
you, Robin.
And have Deborah send the date where we're going to meet each other in New York.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. Nice to meet
Thank
you.
you. Stay well.